Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always. And today we are joined by Parris Lampropoulos, a copywriter, strategist, and serial entrepreneur. As a strategist, he's grown businesses by as much as 32-fold. As a copywriter, he gets hired by 8- and 9-figure businesses to go up against their best performing ads and beat them. His copy wins over 80% of the time and has boosted response by as much as 250%. Several of his controls have run unbeaten for over a decade. Parris continues to influence the field with his unconventional methods and deep market insights. He also trains aspiring copywriters through his legendary Copy Cub program. The waiting list to become one of his Cubs is 4 years long, and everyone who becomes a Cub has to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which means they're not allowed to reveal anything he's teaching them to anyone. Parris also runs a private mastermind for owners of 7- and 8-figure businesses. His goal is to help them out of no man's land to 8-figure success with proven strategies. I've asked Parris to join us here today to share his story and wisdom from over 628 million profitable mail pieces since 1995. So Parris, thanks so much for joining us. How you doing?
Well, thank you for having me. That's interesting. I never heard that one before, 628 million. But that's probably accurate. It might actually be more, but yeah, a lot of,
Welcome.
well, free internet. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, all right, before we hop into this, I always like to ask, how did you even get started in copywriting and advertising? Is this something your parents did? Are you just kind of carrying the generational torch?
Yeah, when I was a little boy, when I was 4 years old, people said, "What do you want to do for a living when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to be a direct response copywriter." Kidding. Nobody says that. I just bungled my way into it like everybody else who does it. I went to college and got out of school and realized I was unemployable and decided I was going to have to employ myself because no one else wanted to employ me.
Hmm.
And so I tried a bunch of stuff and failed at it. And I was actually working in real estate as a real estate salesman and then became the sales manager of that company. Don't ask me how. I talked my way into that one. And this was during the crash, like everybody was dying, companies
Hmm.
were closing their doors, all this stuff. Anyway, one day I go to my mailbox. I don't know if you know what a mailbox is, Daryl, but there were these things, and this guy in a uniform puts envelopes in them.
Right.
But I went there, and there was a sales letter, and the headline said, "How to get people to line up and beg you to take their money." And it was the sales letter for the Gary Halbert letter.
Uh,
As I was reading that thing, it was just pushing my buttons like crazy. I knew I had to have it. And so I did. And I subscribed and I started reading his stuff. And one of them was on how to sell information through the mail. So I started doing that and failing miserably at it because I didn't understand economics. I didn't understand the numbers. I thought I was modeling myself after the big publishing companies like Boardroom and Rodale and Reader's Digest and all those, where they're selling $29 books. I didn't realize that you can't really do that unless you have great economies of scale.
mm,
So I wrote a letter. My first sales letter pulled 3%, and I didn't know that was good. I thought that sucked because I was clueless. I knew nothing. Anyway, struggled through that, finally figured stuff out, started making a bit of money. And then one day I was at a conference and I counted that there were 500 people in the room. And I said, well, these could be potential clients to write copy for. So that night I went over to Kinko's and I wrote a sales letter selling my services as a copywriter. And the next morning I stood outside the convention handing them out like massage parlor leaflets. Ended up getting 6 gigs out of that,
wow.
one of whom ended up being a longtime client. So that's how my copywriting career got started.
I love that. And so for people that, because you hear about that a lot, and I think that on one hand, the tools that we have available today are so incredibly powerful, but because of that, people have almost one, taken for granted, and two, they don't, just because you have an expert tool doesn't mean you know how to use it expertly. So can you
Hmm.
kind of break down what, I mean, well, maybe I'll just say this. I'm trying to come up with a question to get you to say it, but from the way I typically explain copywriting for people is imagine a scenario where back in the day, everyone was either a brick and mortar local based business or they were a traveling salesman and they would travel
Yeah.
around to sell their stuff. And one guy, he's ambitious someday. Maybe he's got a wife at home, a baby on the way, wants him to make more money. He's trying to figure out, how do I knock on more doors faster? And he realizes, I go through the same spiel every time. Maybe if I just write it on a piece of paper and I get some boys in the town to deliver them before I get there, when I get there, I can go through them faster. And so he kind of does this, and some of the houses they go to, they're already ready to order. And so then he gets wise and decides to put an order form attached. And now the model changes, just showing up to a town, dispersing the letters to be delivered, and collecting the money when the boys come back with that. And that's sort of the advent pre kind of post office of what sales copywriting is. Would you agree, disagree? Would you alter that?
Oh, that's exactly, you got it exactly right. That's what sales copy is. And it goes back a long way. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but Benjamin Franklin is in the Direct Marketing Association Hall of Fame. Did you know that? He
Really?
was the United States first postmaster general. But apart from that, he was an entrepreneur and he used to advertise stuff in the newspaper for sale. So he was writing sales copy. And in fact, you're Canadian, so you may not know about this, but the Declaration of Independence, the founding document of our United States of America, was written by a fella named Thomas Jefferson. He was very young when he wrote it. He was in his 30s, but it was copy chiefed by Ben Franklin.
I love that.
So he was like, he was the Elon Musk of his time or the Jeff Bezos of his time, or if you hate those guys, pick someone you like. That's who he was, right? And George Washington, they were all wealthy men and they were the greatest minds of their time. And they all got together and created this thing.
Right.
And to this day, we're the longest living constitution in the world today. It took over
Feels better.
250 years to screw it
Right.
out, but it took a long time to get here.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't get to that.
So how does that, so because I know there's a lot of people that consider themselves copywriters, but I mean, I guess the true metal of a copywriter is whether it gets sales or not at the end of the
That's
day.
right.
Now, is it all about going for the sale first? Because now we've got a lot of people that are into, well, you need to build a following or you need to build a list and you need to do, how does that fit in?
It's not just now, it's always been that way. Some things you could sell right off the page, right? If you got a $39 bottle of vitamins or supplements, it's not economical to do lead gen and then try to close them later, right? There's no margin there. So you're going to try to sell it right off the page. You're going to try to sleep with them on the first date, right? Whereas if you're selling a high ticket thing, probably going to do lead gen. And if it's really high ticket, in the tens or twenties or hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions, you're going to need salespeople,
Mm,
right? Either way, the direct response means you're getting a response of some sort, whether it's somebody buying your product or somebody raising their hand to say that they're a prospect. And, it's just, it all comes to it. Like Dan Kennedy said, it's all about two things: consumer psychology and math. And as I
mm.
pointed out a moment ago, when I started out, I was totally ignorant of the math.
So yeah, let's continue with sort of your career. So you saw this conference, you handed out 500 letters-ish, sales letters for your services. You got 6 clients, and it was just the sky parted, the pearly gates opened, it started raining money from
No,
the
not at
skies.
all.
No?
And I wouldn't be accurate to say I got 6 clients. I got 6 people to pay me to write for them. And this was like dirt cheap. I was charging $2,000 flat fee. I just wanted to get my foot in the door and get some samples under my belt. I got 5 people who were one-offs and one person who became a client for decades. And interesting because, I still had, while we were waiting for results from those first 6 things, I still had to beat the bushes looking for work. So it was, lean times in the beginning. But then one year, one of my clients, and it just happens to be the one who I got at that conference, the one who stayed a client for decades. He was in the financial newsletter publishing business, and then later on in health publishing and health supplements and all that. And he was at this event called the Newsletters Roundtable, Publishers Roundtable, I think is what it was called. And everybody was there, Agora and KCI, which was a big player at the time, Phillips Publishing, which was a big player at the time. And they would just go around the room and share what's working. And one question would be, what's the biggest needle mover you did this year? And so my client, his name was Chip Wood, he said, I hired this kid, Parris Lampropoulos. And once that happened, that's when my phone started ringing off the hook.
And so then what happened?
Then I started writing for all the big companies of the day. Like back then, it was companies like Rodale Press, who published Men's Health and Prevention Magazine, and Boardroom Inc., Bottom Line Publications, and companies like that, Phillips Publishing, Agora. Those were the big guns back then. Those were the ones you wanted to write for because they had deep pockets and they paid high fees and they paid royalties.
Right. I imagine that's pressure. I mean, it sounds like you just kind of came out of the woods. It's sort of almost the hero's journey, so to speak, where you came from your small town beginnings and all of a sudden you land these whale of a clients in your lap. There's some pressure, obviously.
No, there was a lot of pressure.
Yeah. So how do you?
Because you're writing for the royalties, right?
Right.
And so you're going up against someone else. You're competing for the control. Your listeners know what a control is.
Yeah, I was going to say, we should break this down just in case. So we're talking pre-internet, which means that you guys would write essentially, for the most part, as I understand it, a direct response snail mail package that would
right.
be.
I mean, there were other methods too. There was magazines, newspapers, radio, TV, all that kind of stuff. There wasn't an internet yet. But yeah, let's say direct mail, which was my bread and butter back then. The control is the winning ad that they're mailing over and over and over to millions of people. And then they put somebody up against it to beat it because all ads fatigue, right? They're not going to last forever. So rather than waiting around for your ad to fatigue and now you're not bringing any money in, you're always testing against your control. And every internet marketer knows this, right? Today you could test hundreds of things at a time. Back then you could test 3 or 4 at a time. And so they would hire top writers to go up against each other. And it's winner take all, basically, because you want to get the control so that you continue to get paid sales commissions or royalties. We're salesmen, basically,
Right.
and salesmen get paid a commission. So we would get these commissions, and they called them royalties, like because we were writers. So they're royalties. And so it was, it was pretty fierce competition.
Right. Yeah. How do you, what was your Karate Kid sort of training regimen in the early days, that helped you float amongst and even beat the competition in those days? I mean, it sounds like from what I heard, you got Gary Halbert's letter, you started learning, you got some practice, you got a little kid how to sell information on the mail, and then a lot of reps, I imagine.
A lot of reps. Yeah, so I learned from Gary Halbert first, then Ted Nicholas, and then as time went on, I would just latch on to the best people and learn everything I could from them. Halbert and Ted Nicholas, I wasn't super close with them, but I bought all their stuff. But then I got to be mentored like in person. I was really fortunate that I got to be copy chiefed by Bill Bonner and Mark Ford at Agora. And that was amazing. I mean, back then it would be the two of them on the phone with you. I mean, it was just ridiculous, like how fortunate I was to have that. And then I apprenticed under Clayton Makepeace for a couple of years also, and that was amazing also. And so, one of the things I had decided when I first went into this business, because when I was in real estate, the guys I learned from weren't all that good. And so they were kind of mediocre. So what did they teach me how to do? Be mediocre. And so I said, this time around, I want to learn from the best. And so I learned from the best. And, I learned from the guys I just mentioned. I learned from Jay Abraham. I learned from Dan Kennedy. I learned from a lot of amazing people and continue to learn from a lot of amazing people.
Yeah.
And so that was a big part of it. Another part of it was that I sort of stumbled upon something that nobody taught me, but I noticed it. It was kind of hiding in plain sight. And so that became like my little secret weapon. And to this day, 30 years later, I haven't heard anybody else teach it. And I'm not teaching it here either, because that's one of the things that my Cubs have to sign an NDA for. But anyway, once I did that, I became almost unbeatable.
Hmm.
Like I would win 85% of the time against like really top, real top talent. The other thing is a mindset thing. This is very important. Gary Halbert taught me that if you had a gun pointed at your head and you had to make this ad work or they'd blow your brains out, is this the headline you would go with if your life depended on it?
Right.
And so I took that attitude to an extreme where I said, I don't just want to beat the other guy, I want to annihilate him. I
Hmm.
don't care if it's my best friend that I'm going up against. I want to destroy him. I want to give him PTSD. I don't want him to even think of ever wanting to go up against me again.
And a little
So,
competition brings out the best in us. I do
yeah,
too.
so, maybe that's not mentally healthy, but it served me well from the point of view of getting the control. So, there's a story I tell. The first time Boardroom hired me, it was for a book called Tax Loopholes. And it was my very first time with them. And I was like, I don't think I'm ready for this. I'm still kind of new at this. And they put me up against this legendary writer. Like I was in awe of this guy, right? And his control was really good. And I'm like, holy shit, they just put me on a suicide mission. So it was for a tax book, and the headline was Pay No Taxes in 1996. And okay, how do you beat that promise? It's pretty much the ultimate promise, right? And so I called my mentor, Clayton, and I asked him, what do I do here, man? He goes, you're right. This is really good. It's going to be hard to beat this. But if there's one weakness to this piece is that it could be strong around specifics. So maybe if you did more specifics, you have a shot. I'm like, okay, specifics. So I start looking through that lens of specifics. And somewhere along the line, I found that the average reader of that book saved, I forget the exact number, but it was like $10,932, let's say, a year on their taxes. So I'm like, okay, maybe that's my headline. Save 10,000, the average reader saves $10,932. So now if I ask you what's stronger, save $10,932, which is specific and hence possibly more believable, or pay no taxes,
Yeah,
which one would win?
the specific for sure. Because
Gonna
those
say heads down. Well, guess what? If you ask 10 people, half of them will say the specific, half of them will say the pay no money. So what does that tell me? That tells me that ain't the headline. There's a 50% chance I'm going to win. That's not good enough for me. Remember, gun to the hand, I
right.
have to win, no ifs or buts. So anytime I tell this to people all the time, a lot of time people send me an email with like four subject lines, and they're like, I go, well, which one do you like the best? They go, I don't know. I go, yeah, that means none of them are good enough. Go back until you have one that
Mm-hmm.
you know before it even fucking ran that
Uh,
it's great.
yeah.
So I look at it, I go, do I know this is going to win? No, that means not there yet. Go back to the drawing board. So I'm going through my research some more because the game is won or lost in research, right? And I read this chapter in the book that said that you can go back and amend previous year's tax returns, right? Because, like, let's say you made a mistake or you forgot to deduct something or something like that. So I say to myself, if the average person saves $10,932. And if you could go back and amend previous returns, wouldn't it follow that you could just go back and get $10,932 from the IRS?
Yeah.
So I asked the editor of the book, who was a tax attorney, I said, is that true? He goes, yeah. So I'm like, okay.
The hook.
So my headline became Bombshell from Top Tax Attorney. The IRS owes you $932.
Ooh.
Here's how to
Ooh.
get it in as little as 90 days. So that was one version. The other one was, there used to be this joke that what's the best headline would be free money. So
Right.
I did free money from the IRS. And then the subhead was if you're the average taxpayer, the IRS owes you $10,932. Here's how to get it in as little as 30 days.
Right.
So I ran it and it won. And
Wow.
that was how I got my foot in the door with Boardroom. I did it and it won. And they go, hey, we want to give you another one. I'm like, awesome. And they go, it's for our tax newsletter. I'm like, ah, fuck, taxes again.
Yeah.
But I did that one and that one won also. And then they gave me all their other stuff. At one time, I had the controls for all three of their flagships: Bottom Line Personal, Bottom Line Health, and Bottom Line Tomorrow.
Very impressive. I love what you talked about there. That's such an easy thing. You talk about subject lines. Today's day and age, people think like email subject lines. The amount of energy and effort, like you read the book, you talked to the author of the book, and you were just working on the headline. A lot of people, I actually talked to my staff about this. We had an email that we wrote, and then there was the same thing, subject line. I said, we need to spend more time on the subject line. You spend all this time
Right.
in the email. You don't just pick one willy-nilly. You have to get that, right. What would you recommend to someone who's starting out and struggling right now? Someone's listening to this, they know they need to, to grow their business. Everyone's saying copywriting is the skill you got to learn. Like,
I
okay.
believe that's still true, by the way, even with AI.
Mhm.
Copywriting is still the ultimate superpower. Let's say AI becomes better than us, which it's not right now. But let's say we get artificial general intelligence and it becomes way smarter than us, way better at writing copy, way better at all these things. I still think you should not abdicate to AI. Because if you do, what happens? You atrophy, right? If you're
Right.
not exercising your brain, it atrophies, right? If you look at all the things that really great copywriters are good at, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, knowing how to put forth a logical argument. There's the emotional piece of it and there's the logical piece of it. All this kind of stuff, these are valuable life skills. Before I was a copywriter, I was an okay salesman, but after I became a copywriter, I was a great salesman. Before I was a copywriter, I was an okay negotiator. Now I'm a really good negotiator. Before I was a copywriter, I was okay with women. Now I'm really successful with women. It's made me better at everything. It's made me a better parent because it's really understanding people on a deep level and empathizing with them, understanding what makes people tick and just knowing human psychology on a deep level. And also the logic part, like being able to advance an argument and seeing where if A, then B, and all that kind of stuff, like, syllogisms, right? What a syllogism, from a syllogism would be all men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is
Mm.
mortal, right? Like all this kind of stuff. I actually studied this in college and I'd forgotten about how deep I went into it in college. But there were these things called truth tables where you would have like all these columns and all these rows. And on the bottom, based on all the stuff, you would have to put if it's true or false at the bottom, right? And if you know any friends who are attorneys, they had to take the LSAT. The
Mhm.
hardest part of that test is that part
Mm.
where they're testing you on your ability to have a logical argument. Because if you're advancing your argument at a trial and you screw it up and the other attorney comes in and goes, that's not true, that doesn't follow, you're cooked.
Right.
So there's all these skills that you get. And I'm not saying copywriting is the only skill, but if you're really good at copywriting, you get good at all that stuff. And that serves you well in other areas of your life. And if you just abdicate to AI, I mean, it's one thing to delegate, it's another thing to abdicate,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Well said.
And so if you abdicate, you're just going to become, that movie Wall-E where humans are these lazy lumps
Yeah.
because they're not doing anything. That's what's going to happen to us if we allow it to. Now, the other thing is, I think even delegating to AI today, as good as it is, it's only going to be as good as you. You know how you read this copy and you could just tell AI wrote it? Or you read it and something's just not quite there about it. So for you to get good results, like recently I wrote a post on Facebook where I said, for the past 2 years, I've been quietly running this mastermind. And I heard that people were saying, oh, that was written by AI because it used the word quietly. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. It's a 2 paragraph email post. I didn't need to use ChatGPT
Right.
to write 2 paragraphs. But I said, and by the way, if I had, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Number one, I know how to train it. See, here's another thing. I view everything in life through the lens of the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, right? 20% of the salespeople make 80% of the sales, right? You've heard this before, but it applies to everything. 20% of the landmass on the planet accounts for 80% of the population. 80% of crimes are committed by 20% of repeat offenders. I've seen Perry Marshall do a demonstration where he'll ask, stand up if you have a TV, and everybody stands up except like one person, because there's always one who doesn't have one.
The
And he
thief.
says, keep standing if you have two TVs, three, four, five. By the time he was done, there was a dude in the audience who had 22 TVs in his house.
That's
He even had one in his garage. So when he pulls in with the car, he goes, but 80% of TVs are owned by 20% of the people.
yep.
Anyway, the important thing is that 20% in any field get 80% of the results.
That's
And
right.
that's for everything: doctor, lawyer, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, and copywriter, right? Now, do the top 20% do things the same way as the 80? No, because if they did, they'd get the same results,
Okay.
right? Now, here's the really interesting thing is that Pareto is fractal. So within
Yes.
that top 20%, there's another 80-20 relationship where the 20 of the 20 are getting 80% of those results. And then the 20, there's another 20. So you get the top 20 of the top 20 of the top 20,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You go from the top 20% to the top 4% to the top 1.6% to the top 0.32% and so on, right? The difference between the people at the top and the people at the bottom is massive. Like it's you can't even wrap your head around how it is. Okay, let's get back to AI, ChatGPT. You're going to use ChatGPT to write something. Do you think that ChatGPT was trained on the top 20% or the top 4% or the top 1.6% of
It's
information?
been there somewhere, but I don't know if it'll recognize it.
No, it's trained on everything.
Yes.
Or at very best, it's trained on what Google or some other entity uses an algorithm to say that this is good stuff, which is basically middle of the road crap,
From what
right?
I understand, it's a lot of it is an advancement in Google predictive search. If I go to Google and I type in a keyword, it tries to predict what I'm
Right,
going to search next based off of
right.
searches that have happened and the statistical probability
Yes,
that blah blah blah. And that was just a sentence, but now we have it to entire words. I agree
right.
with you on that. I don't necessarily subscribe to the concept that AI is going to replace humanity in the sense of I was really shocked. So I've donated sperm a couple of times, and I was getting interested in like IVF and this. Anyways, and I found out I was shocked that at fertility clinics, when they put the petri dish and they put the sperm and the egg together, there's a flash of light. There's a legitimate flash of light. We have a spark. You can see videos of this on YouTube. Was IVF the moment of the spark of life? And to me, that's as close as I can get to a scientific, replicatable, reproducible experiment proving that I have a spark, I have a soul of some sort. And until we figure out how to do that, the scientists say it's a release of zinc, right? Okay, well, show me how you're going to release zinc and create conscious life that is self-perpetuating. And until then, AI is just another tool. We've been saying humans are going to be replaced for forever. When the tractor came out, we don't need farmers. Calculator came out, we don't need mathematicians. Spreadsheets, we don't need accountants. Google QuickBooks, we don't need CPAs. It's just a tool. And until we have a
Right.
boss that figures out some sort of self-directed purpose and mission, and it's just a tool for us. It's just a very
Well, that goes back, yeah, and that's exactly right. And it goes back to what we were saying. A tool is only as good as the person
person
using
to
it. If
use
you're
it.
a
Yes.
shitty carpenter, I don't care if you have the best hammer and the best saw and the
Yep.
best everything, right? Because I'm a shitty carpenter, so I can speak from experience. So with the copywriting, the AI is not discerning. You have to discern for it. It
Yes.
does things like you said on statistical patterns. It
Yeah.
guesses what the next word in a sentence is going to be. And that doesn't have anything to do with quality. That just has
Mhm.
to do with how frequently
Yep.
something happens.
Yep.
And so to use it well, you have to A, be really good at training it, B, write really good prompts, which is a different thing than training it. I
Mhm.
train it on my work and then I write prompts. And the prompts I write are about the ninja secret shit that no one knows. And then number three, once it spits it out, you have to tell it what it did wrong and how to fix it, or you have to rewrite it yourself.
Mhm.
So is it a great tool? Hell yeah. I wrote something in 3 days that would have taken me a month to
Yeah.
write. But it's not a replacement for us. And it may replace us someday because it's growing so fast. It's like ridiculous. It's really exponential growth.
Oh yeah.
People like to throw away that term, exponential growth. This really is exponential growth, but it is. It's a tool. And whether it ends up being smarter than us or not, we shouldn't abdicate it. We should
No,
delegate. People that do it.
100%. 100%. We owe our ancestors things. If you talk to me pre-COVID and post-COVID, I've changed in a lot of ways as a person. One is discovering that was a big impact for me to see that spark. For me, like I said, it was like proof. That was such a shock when I saw that, because I grew up in a house of hard sciences. My step adopted dad worked in applied physics and geology. Show me the proof. And when I saw that, that was really powerful. So what are some of the biggest mistakes people are making in trying to do it? Not everybody, especially now, to be able to contact 2,000 people is a superpower compared to pre-internet. And so that's why I say we've got such power now, but people just squander it. There's so much junk and noise out there because it takes no energy to write an email and send it. So what are some of the big mistakes that people are making? Because you're talking about the time you took to write a headline for a package. People aren't doing, like, they're setting like, oh, I'm going to set up 40 Facebook ads and it's going to come out of the wash. And
well, yeah, you could do that certainly. And we do that. But getting back to emails, see, there's a cost to everything, right? Nothing's free. So if you're testing 40 variations of an ad, that costs money, right? Every time you're running a different ad, there's a cost per thousand, there's a cost per, right? But email, they're like, oh, email's free. No, it's not. Because this is your relationship with your customers, the most precious thing your business has, your customers. And if you send them crap, what are they going to do? They're going to stop opening the emails, right? So there's no such thing as a neutral email. Every email you send is either helping the relationship with the customer or hurting it. There's no middle ground.
Yeah.
So if you send an email that they open and read and buy, that helped your relationship with them. If you send an email that's not selling anything, but they opened it and read it and learned something and were wowed by it, oh my God, that just changed my whole paradigm. That email, like what you just said about the spark a moment ago, that shit's like, holy, that really blew my mind. So that's what you want to send your customers. You want to send them emails that blow their mind. So every time they open and read it and love it, you're adding to that. Ian Stanley calls it an emotional bank account, right? And every time they buy something from you, you're adding to the emotional account. Every time you send them an email that they don't open or that they don't click on, you're subtracting from the emotional bank account. So you can't just be really lackadaisical about this. This is super important, right? And like email copywriters tend to get paid less than writers who write VSLs, but they're very important. This is your customer list. If you don't really work at your emails.
So in today's day and age, not everybody's sending, the mailbox is pretty quiet. That's a good
opportunity for people who use it. We still get like about 15% of the companies that I'm an owner in and partner in. We still get about 15% of our revenues from snail mail.
That's fantastic. How has the model changed for people that read the old school books?
It's changed a lot as far as direct mail. In the old days, you used to be able to just rent somebody's list. I'm going to mail Agora's list. I'm going to mail their newsletter, strategic investment. I'm going to mail that list. Or I'm going to mail Bottom Line Health, or I'm going to mail supplement buyers, right? And you would just rent the list and it would work. That doesn't work anymore. Now they take all these different lists of different customers and put them in a pot, in this big pot, and then they start modeling them. They overlay all the demographic and psychographic data from the big data houses. And so there's 3 players in the industry who do that. And so they're putting together your mail plan for you. Based on predictive modeling, they're mailing it to the names that they think are going to work. So there's good and bad to that. The good is, look at this amazing tool where you can make a mailing profitable that wouldn't otherwise be profitable. The bad is there's only 3. So it's the same bullshit as Facebook, Google, they're all an oligopoly and they can do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
With Facebook compliance, there was stuff that they wouldn't approve that we would do, right? Yep. And so we got the good old US mail. You could say anything you want to the mail. Well, not true anymore.
Not true anymore. Right.
Because these companies that control that, they're like, no, we're not approving that. It
Right.
used to be in the past, the list owner would approve it. You want to mail to my list? I mean, I'm not going to mail your offer for dick pills. Sorry, too easy doing that. Okay. But now it's not me approving it. It's this big conglomerate that takes everybody's lists and puts them together and does the modeling.
Yeah. So can we talk about that? Because before it was very linear. You'd write a magazine ad and they'd reply with the coupon and you'd send them
Right.
whatever, or you drop the snail mail and they make the phone call and you get the orders. How has that changed, or how does it work online? Is it,
No, attribution, as you know, I think you're asking me a question that you know the answer to,
yeah.
is not so cut and dried, right? There are tools like Hyros or Amplitude where you could track exactly what that person's journey was from the first time they saw one of your ads to when they bought. Oh, look, they saw our Facebook ad and they clicked on it, but they didn't buy. And then we retargeted them and they did this thing and then they opted into our list and then they bought from an email. Or, oh, look, they saw us on YouTube first, but then they bought off Facebook. Well, who gets credit for that sale? Is it the last touch? Is it, it's like and sometimes we get people who just go to our homepage and order from there. I'm a partner in a nutritional supplement company. And we got a lot of people just buying from the homepage. They saw an email, but for whatever reason decided to go to the homepage. Maybe they wanted to stock up on a bunch of stuff. So there's more noise now, and you have to be good at cutting through that noise. We had an incident about a year or so ago where we hired a new Facebook agency, and they're like, we're crushing it, man. And it turns out, no, we were losing money. I'm like, really? This limp dick copy is crushing it? And now we've got it dialed in where they have access to all our data and we know what's going on.
I had a friend, he had a 30-day lead to buyer cycle and he hired an agency. This is years ago now, the Facebook ads hired an agency to get him cheaper leads. They got him cheaper leads, but it took him 30 days to figure out none of them converted. And now,
Right.
he almost took a nosedive out of that because
The most expensive leads of all, the cheap ones that don't convert.
it took him a month to figure out what was going on. It took a month for it to change, and then it took a month to figure out what was going on, and then you got to pivot until you figure out what the issue is.
Yeah.
So
It's like when Apple changed the iOS and you couldn't pixel
see
people
open,
anymore.
yeah,
Everybody was like, oh my God. Every time some new thing happens, everybody scrambles to figure it out,
yeah,
right? I've been around long enough. I've had every, the Google slap, the Facebook slap, the YouTube slap, and all
yeah,
of them.
yeah.
Anything that can happen to you, right? Like regulatory agencies,
Mm,
suing you, you suing people, other people. It's just when you're in business, it's war. You know what I
right.
mean? You never know what's every year, something that you weren't expecting at all comes along and just slaps you upside the head.
Yeah, that's what keeps it exciting.
Supply chain issues and all that kind of stuff, you name it.
Yeah.
So it's not for the faint of heart.
So is it, the early days of the internet, you would just take your sales letter, put it up as a web page, and run
Yeah.
ads to drive traffic to it. Is it still that, despite all the changes, in a nutshell?
Well, in essence, that's what it is. Yeah. Whether you're running Facebook ads or YouTube ads or native ads or email traffic drivers, where you do paid placements to somebody else's list, or you have a lot of affiliates sending traffic to your page. Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing.
It's all choreographing the sales experience. I think Jeff Walker talked about his launch as essentially a sideways sales letter. It's a sales
Yeah.
letter that's run as a series of events over a horizontal timeline, essentially.
It was basically he took a Magalog and made it go this way.
Yeah.
So back in the day, there was just regular sales letters in an envelope, but 8-page letter, 16-page letter. Then they invented the Magalog, which was a sales letter disguised as a magazine. You got it in your mailbox and it had a magazine. Well, what do magazines have in them? They have articles. So you're giving away free information within that direct mail piece. And Jeff said, well, instead of doing it all at once, we'll drip information. It'll be an event. And so you have all this content leading up to when they open the cart, right?
Hmm.
And all the anticipation building. And I always thought that the biggest reason why those worked was scarcity. And Jeff told me, no, that's not the biggest reason. The biggest reason is we're getting real time feedback from the people who were doing
Hmm.
this to the prospects over the course of the launch.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's probably, I mean, even when we talk about doing market intelligence research now, I mean, before you'd have to pay thousands of dollars of people with clipboards running around surveying people and tallying the results of that. Now you can go and there's all sorts of tools. You can jump in a Facebook group, search for keywords like frustrated and overwhelmed or fed up.
Right?
Reddit's the best.
Yeah, because people are being their true unfiltered selves. If you ask people stuff, they're not going to necessarily tell you the truth.
Right.
They're either going to tell you what makes them look good, or they're going to tell you what they want you to hear, or they're going to tell you what they think is the intelligent answer, right? So you know what fascination bullets are, right?
Yeah, fascination is it's a bullet, but it's written as a curiosity evoking, like you said,
Yeah,
like little mind, like fascination.
right. If you read all those old Boardroom Inc. mailings and Rodale, they were almost all fascination driven, right? And it's all these little bullets, and a person might buy because of one bullet that really gets under their skin. Like, I can't go to sleep until I know the answer to this, right? So it's kind of like a headline like statement, right? And anyway, what I read early in my career, remember, my whole attitude is win at all costs, leave nothing to chance, right? And I read an interview with Gary Benzavenga where he said, actually, it wasn't an interview, it was a newsletter he wrote advertising his services as a copywriter. And he said, we don't start writing until we have 7 times more information than we could use.
Mm,
So I said, okay, well, if Gary Benzavenga, the greatest copywriter ever, if he says that, then I'm going to do that. So I started doing it. So if I'm going to write a 30-page sales letter, that means I need 210 pages of
no,
material to draw, to condense it to a 30-page sales letter.
right.
But I also applied it to fascinations. I said, oh, wait, if there's going to be 100 fascinations in this promo, I'm going to write 700 and pick the best 100. So
Mhm.
that's what I started doing. And I've heard other people say, I'd rather blow my brains out than write
Right.
700.
But then they don't want to win. They don't
Okay.
want to win.
But that's how you get a control that runs for 10 years, right?
Yeah.
You can write a control that runs for 6 months, sure. But I don't look at it. I never looked at them as assignments. I looked at them as annuities. I wanted stuff. I had one thing that paid my mortgage for 10 years. That's what I want.
Yeah.
So I would write 700 fascination bullets, and then now I've got to pick the best 100. And it was, well, how do you know what the best ones are? Oh, ask the audience. So I got together a bunch of people from different clients in that niche who would be actual prospects for this product, for this mailing that was
Mhm.
going out. And I said to them, hey, would you be interested in doing a focus group? I called it a focus group, even though it's not really a focus group. Why did I call it a focus group? Because people know what a focus group is.
Mhm.
You've been walking through the mall and somebody stops you and they, hey, you want to do a focus group? We'll pay you $50. I said, I'll pay you $50. And guess what? You don't have to go anywhere for this focus group. You could do it right from the privacy of your own home. All I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a bunch of bullet points and then you pick the ones. Now, here's the key, right? If I said pick the ones that you like, I would
Different.
get inaccurate data.
Right.
So instead, I said, pick the ones that you want to know the answer to. And so they're picking the ones they want to know the answer to. And I know they're giving me accurate data because they're picking stuff like about impotence and farting and all embarrassing shit that you normally wouldn't want to admit to. They're just picking it because they're not looking at it through that filter. They're just, oh, I want to know the answer to this.
Yeah.
Because after all, that's what the point of the bullet is. You want to know the answer to it. So you buy the book or newsletter or video or whatever course that tells you the answer.
I love that.
And being good at fascination bullets, even though information publishing is largely a dead industry, it's a great skill because guess what? If you have a control, if you have a VSL script and you're trying to come up for hooks for that VSL script, one of the easiest way to do it is to just pretend that that script is a book and you're writing fascination bullets for
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
Bingo. Now you got a bunch of subject lines to test and add.
Yeah. 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 This stuff is so powerful. I feel like it's, I don't want to say a lost art or a dying art. I just feel that because of the advancements in technology, people aren't going as deep anymore to a certain extent.
Some people are.
Some people are
It's everything, the more
80-20.
things change, the more they stay the same.
Right.
We're always going to have industrious people and lazy people.
Yes. Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
laziness could be a good thing in certain instances, right?
Yes.
But if you're trying to get good at something,
Yeah.
you got to put in the reps.
Yeah. You got to rep it out. Hard work will always beat talent when talent refuses to work hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. I love that. So where do you see things going then? And, if you look through your crystal ball, if the next 10 years are anything like the last 30, when it comes to marketing and that.
I just think, again, the more things change, the more things stay the same. So some things are never going to change. Human nature is not going to change, I don't think. Right? It's all evolutionary psychology. You can predict almost all behavior if you look at it through the lens of evolutionary psychology. So we're just basically animals that happen to know how to walk and talk and all that shit and do math but we're still basically animals. We're still apes, right? So when I'm writing copy, I'm always selling to all three levels. I'm selling to the logical brain, to the mammalian brain, and the lizard brain, right? And the lizard brain's the one that calls the shots, but the logical brain thinks it's calling the shots. So you cloak everything under the guise of a logical argument. So what I do is I write emotional copy disguised as logical, rational copy. My stuff isn't histrionic. It doesn't grab you by the lapels, maybe John Carlton or somebody like that. My stuff's more understated, like Ted Nicholas or Gary Benzavenga, where it just kind of sneaks up on you.
Hmm.
You're reading and you go, oh, this is interesting. And you're just kind of reading it along. And before you realize what happened to you, you're reaching for your wallet and pulling out your credit card. Human nature, I don't think it's going to change. It may, a million years from now, if we're still around, who knows? But for my lifetime, at least, and my kids' lifetime, I think we're just going to continue to behave the way we've behaved for the past few thousand years.
A safe bet, I think. I think. So who should be some of the, obviously you're one of the role models. Who are some of the people that the youngsters coming up that want to get good in this field? If someone is starting out wanting to master this craft, this trade, what would be your advice to them? We already talked about getting the reps. You've given lots of good
Yeah.
tips. Really,
My advice is there's a lot of value in the classic books. Most of the copywriting courses, quite frankly, are mediocre. So the value is in the low price stuff, the books like John Caples and Gene Schwartz and all that kind of stuff. And then in the really high end stuff. And the middle is kind of,
Okay.
So I always start with my Cubs by doing the books. We get a foundation. You got to get grounded in the fundamentals. And after they're grounded in the fundamentals, then I teach them the ninja stuff. And so when I have Cubs, I look for people who have a few years under their belt because I don't want brand spanking newbies, but I don't want people who've been doing it so long that they have these ingrained habits that they now have to unlearn.
Yep. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Parris, this has been a great call. I've got a couple pages of notes. Is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
Oh, we could have talked about a bunch of stuff. We didn't really talk about business that much apart from copy, but that's my jam is copy's great. And that was my entree
Right.
into the business world. But I just love scaling businesses.
Can we touch on that briefly? Because we talked a lot about copy and it almost seems like the front end, but I guess on the back end, what am I trying to say? Almost like there's the 7 virtues and the 7 deadly sins. Are there sort of like the 7 principles? I don't know, like RFM. Analyze your database by RFM.
Knowing your numbers for sure. You know what's a very neglected thing is customer service. Most customer service sucks. And again, what's your most precious asset? Your customers. It costs you all that money to get that customer.
Yes.
And people it's like sending them shitty emails or having shitty fulfillment or having shitty phone reps when, when you call up somebody because they fucked up, you're kind of ready for a fight usually, right?
Yeah.
And you just have to really go the extra mile for people.
Mm,
If you do have great service all the time, they're gonna like you. But if you screw up and then go out of your way to make it up to them and give them multiple what they asked for, then they're gonna love you and they're gonna talk to everybody about you. I used to buy these keto bombs, right? The little
yeah.
snacks,
Okay.
little ketogenic snacks. Like it's
Okay.
like a chocolate, but it's really a big ball of fat with
Yeah.
one
Okay.
chocolate,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
I ordered 3 boxes and the order comes and it's 1 box. And I'm like, motherfucker, because
Yeah.
like
Right.
the worst thing in the world that I only got 1 box. But
Right.
that's how we behave as human beings. We get all bent out of shape and our panties in a wad. So I call up and I say that and they apologize and they say, we're going to overnight it to you. And the next day, you know what I got in the mail or from the
What?
UPS or whatever?
What?
6 boxes.
Wow.
And here I am all these years later, still telling that story.
Yeah. And for them, the cost was nothing.
They're playing the long game. We have to remember we're playing the long game. I was just at Affiliate Summit East whatever it was, a month ago or 2 months ago, whatever the hell it was. And that world is really funny to me because they're all about the short term affiliates, right? They're just
Mhm.
like, what's going to make me money this month? And when that offer starts pulling, I'm going to jump to the other offer, and then I'm going to jump to the other offer. And that's fine if you want to do that. But when you own a business, you got to play the
Long game. Can we talk about how you make a promotion last 10 years? Because in breakthrough advertising, he talks about the 5 stages of market awareness, but over 10 years.
state of awareness changes and the stage of sophistication changes.
So is that what causes, like when you talk about ad fatigue in the life cycle of a promotion, is it because of the stages of awareness or is it due to the lack of robustness to address all of them? Or is it focusing on the
Yeah,
mechanism, strong enough mechanism that sees you through?
yeah, it's all of the above. So there's a few things here. Number one, everything's going to fatigue
Mhm.
because after a certain point, everybody's seen it already, and whoever bought was going to buy bought. So when I say I had a control I've had a bunch that were over 10 years, the lead changes. You're
Mm,
always testing a different lead, but
got
the guts are the same. So the one that's 15 years now still running, it's on its death's doorstep now. It's had a good run, but 80% of it is the same, and it's the top 15 that changes over time.
got it.
And so that's been the case with most of those long-standing controls. But for the bottom 80% to continue to pull year after year, you're not going to get that unless you have depth. So what do I mean by depth? It's so dense with stuff that you could read it 8 times and still notice something new the 8th time that you didn't notice the 7th or the 6th or the 5th. So when I said I write 700 fascinations to come up with the best 100, that's depth. In the direct mail pieces, we had all these different sidebars. That's depth, right? All the different ways that you can sell somebody on this, all the way you want to get them to see things in a way they didn't see them before. Have you ever heard something where you've heard it like a dozen times and it
That,
never really affected you? And then the 13th time somebody phrased it differently and you were like, you had a light bulb moment? That's what I attempt to do in everything I write is have those light bulb moments because we're trying to change people's behavior, right? In this case, get them to buy, or in other cases, not get them to buy necessarily. You could have a sidebar in there where you're telling them whatever, eat vegetables. They've heard that a million times, but you just say it in a new way, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh my God, right? I should do that." I don't know if you follow baseball, but any sport really would probably have this. But
baseball.
it, what do you need to win the World Series?
A lot of base
You
hits.
3 good starting pitchers. That's what you need to win the World Series,
Mm,
right? What do you need to get to the World Series? You need a lot of depth. You need
mm.
lots of players filling lots of roles. You need a guy who could come off the bench and pinch hit, or a guy who could pinch run, a guy who you put in at the end of the game as a defensive replacement so that, he could catch the ball and get those last three outs. You need starters, you need middle relievers, you need closers, you need, power hitters, you need all kinds of stuff. That's what longevity is. Whereas World Series, tight time frame, 4 games you got to win. If you got 3 great starting pitchers, you can win those 4 games. So I know writers who get amazing results out of the gate. They'll write a promo and it'll kick ass, but it'll fatigue really quickly because it doesn't have the depth.
Yeah, that's powerful. Can we talk, since I got here, about the math part in terms of, first off, it's arithmetic. Cost per lead,
Yeah.
cost per sale, minus cost plus cost of goods sold minus the
Right.
sale price, essentially. And then your EBITDA. At what point do you keep just trying to add on to the lifetime customer value versus the front? Like, can you speak to that a little bit? The arithmetic.
Sure. I
The
mean, the game's
seesaw.
going to be one, again, you want a long-standing business, you have to have a lifetime value. CPMs keep going up.
Mhm.
They're ridiculous now.
Yeah.
To advertise on Facebook, the CPMs, it's ludicrous what they're charging now.
Yeah.
You're not going to win that game unless you have a lifetime value. Sure, you should do things to keep your CPMs low. Sure, you got to have crackerjack media buyers who know how to do all these things, right? You have to have relevant messaging, all this kind of thing. But if you're looking for a quick hit, then do something else. So I said before, I used the metaphor. I said we want to sleep with them on the first date. But of course, if we don't, there's a second date and a third date and a fourth date, aka retargeting, or getting even better, getting them to opt in. And now you could send them emails for free. So that's super important. There's actually formulas for that, mathematical formulas.
Mhm.
But every business, it depends on the economics of a business. If you're in a supplement business like I am, our margins are razor thin. Whereas if you're selling something high ticket,
You have more
you got
wiggle room.
a lot more
Yeah.
wiggle room. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also you talked about specificity. You can increase the price of something just by making it more specific. I remember you talked about supplements. You reminded me, Ed O'Keefe was talking about for him in supplements, they went from like 6 figures a month to $1 million a month because he started going after specific ailments, diabetes, high blood pressure, and its benefits. That specificity, consistently selling a specific problem to a specific solution for a specific type of person. Parris, I would love to keep chatting with you. I do want to be respectful of your time. This has been great. I've got a couple pages of notes. People probably want to listen to this more than once to make sure they got all of the goods. It definitely had depth to it. People want to learn more, if they want to find out, they want to follow along. What are some of the best ways for them to get in touch?
And so it's really funny because, for 30 years, I didn't have a website. I didn't have business cards. I had an unlisted phone number back when there was such a thing as unlisted phone numbers. And what I started doing a couple of years ago is I started holding these small events. And just that's a whole other story. It was more like a hobby than anything else. And then a lot of those people wanted to keep working with me, so I made a mastermind. And I still do the mastermind. I haven't done a small event in a long time, but I may because I got to the point with the mastermind where I was like, all right, I either have to grow this or just shut it down. And I decided that I want to grow it. So I'm probably going to be doing some webinars to different people's lists to get more new peeps into our mastermind. But for now, if anybody's interested, my assistant said to just send her an email. And her email is assistant@parrislamp.com. That's Parris with 2 R's. So it's assistant, ASSISTANT, at PARRISLAMP.com.
So check out, send an email to, that is assistant, ASSISTANT, at Parris.com. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Parris, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an honor and a pleasure. I've got nothing but mad respect for what you've done with your career and for
Thank
the
you.
legacy you've created. And just thank you for coming and sharing with my audience and I, knowing that you've got your own direct reports, your own businesses to run, your own paying clients. Thank you for coming and sharing with all of us so we can all hopefully do a little bit better.
Well, thank you, Daryl. I really enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun. So thanks for having me.